Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and for the next 30 minutes or so, I've got a real treat for you. I really like it when I get the opportunity to sit down and discuss things with other guerrilla journalists, with other people on the ground at not only the events like we saw last week, but getting media footage in the raw that you only see clips of, if that, in the mainstream. And that's why I think it's great that I've got Kristen T. Harris with me today. And if you're unfamiliar with Kristen's work, he's also the host of The Rundown Live. We're going to get into all that stuff, but we saw one another over in D.C. This past weekend. Kristen, how are you, sir?
Hey, good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are around the world. And I'm doing good. I got back from DC. I had a crazy drive, like 15 hours in order to do the radio show. Obviously, I'm on KGRA radio Monday through Friday, 11 to 2 a.m. Central Standard Time. You can download that app if you're interested, or you can find me on therundownlive.com. But it was a long ride, and I made it. But there was a lot of information, a lot of things going on in DC.
Well, not only that, but like I think I left the day before. I ended up leaving Sunday night. I did a straight shot to the baby maker, 13 hours, back to Iowa. But, while that was going on, you had the first vaccine rollouts. You had the Electoral College going on. You had the false rumor that Julian Assange was going to be pardoned. We're going to go over all that, what you thought of the rallies this week. But before we even get there, Kristen, I want you to tell my audience how you got into this line of work and how you got interested not only in the radio aspect, but again, being on the ground of these events. For those that don't know, you're the one that got the majority, I'd say, of what people saw of the Kyle Rittenhouse footage. So you've been doing this for years. You're kind of one of those unsung heroes behind the scenes, almost like, a Ford Fisher with opinions. Ford's in D.C., so he's constantly getting the stuff. But you're on the ground as well. What sparked your interest in this field?
Well, first of all, Ford Fisher doesn't have a cool accent like I have, but, I'd have to say, like a lot of us, I found out that the two-party system is really a trap. That was because of Ron Paul, and at the time, I was a bleeding, loving conservative that believed that the state couldn't do anything wrong and that government is there to help us. And Ron Paul kind of helped me deal with my cognitive dissonance. And that's two words everybody should really learn and understand and research. What is cognitive dissonance and what are logical fallacies? Because it seems like we're bombarded by propaganda that is there to social engineer us to have a certain viewpoint or a certain point of view and think a certain way. In fact, I believe that a lot of the things that we are seeing today are a result of social engineering, and including what we saw in DC, including what we saw in Kenosha. And you're right. I started out just doing talk radio. I blogged. Ron Paul said, write your local newspapers. They're looking for bloggers. We need more libertarian-minded people out there. And so I wrote to the local Journal Sentinel in Milwaukee. They gave me a blog, and I started writing. And when I started writing, that's how I met Mike Pachesney, who started the show. But obviously, I'm carrying the torch as he is no longer able to do the show. So
that's how you get involved. And you just told people that you were from Wisconsin. Before we get into recent events, why don't you tell people, I guess there's been a lot of talk about Kyle Rittenhouse. We have one end that sees him as a hero, another end that literally is taking out advertisements calling him a domestic terrorist and a white supremacist, right? Is the truth somewhere in between? Because from what I've seen, this is a kid, this is a teenager coming back to the local community in which he works. He lives outside of, the city this all takes place, and he's kind of overwhelmed. I think that the truth lies somewhere in the middle. I think the real question overall is, why are we in a situation where the police aren't doing their jobs and you have a fully armed 17, 18-year-old out there in the situation in the first place? But there's really nobody out there that was closer to that situation, talked to Kyle before the incident, filmed it as it's happened. What has that left you with?
Well, the whole scenario was a mess. So, first of all, the local community was upset that the police were only protecting federal buildings. And as you could see, there was a church that burnt down. There were other businesses that burnt down. A car lot got torched. And the owner of that car lot also owned additional lots throughout the community. And so on Monday night, there was already some armed citizens protecting a minorities business, a gas station, and it worked out real peacefully, and there wasn't a lot of drama. Fast forward to Tuesday, I saw a post in Facebook saying we are looking for local citizens to come armed and protect local businesses in Kenosha, and that they were meeting at this location. So I wrote a little ditty about it on the Rundown Live, and I went down there at 8 o'clock, and nobody was there. So I was like, fake news, either that or, a lot of the times these militia stories are fabricated. Nothing comes of them. Remember the Hells Angels that were going to go beat up Antifa? Whatever happened to that? Fake news. So as the night was going on, I was filming a bunch of, tear gas, rubber bullets, kids with slingshots, M80s, quarter sticks of dynamite being thrown at police, Bearcats, barreling through protesters. And then there was one lady that was just holding a BLM sign, true protester, nonviolent, getting tear gassed. Even the BLM people were throwing water bottles, and it seemed like they were trying to hit her, because what I found is that a lot of the people that were there weren't even from the community. They were imported from CHOP, from Chaz, from other areas to help destabilize it. In fact, the people who were shooting industrial fireworks were arrested, and it turned out they were from Portland. So they weren't even from the area. And anyways, long story short, I saw a guy that was dressed in what looked like to me to be militia. And in Wisconsin, we don't really have a Proud Boy movement, but we do have a lot of Boogaloo kids, these kids that are militia. It's a gun culture. We have hunting and a lot of things. So I asked him, hey, is there any more armed citizens? He said, yeah, they're on the other side of this building here. Go find them. So that's when you see me strolling up on Kyle Rittenhouse. And the first thing I did is introduce myself. I said, I'm with the Rundown Live. I was here to film. I just would like to get both sides of the story. I figured I already had 4 days of the police shooting rubber bullets and tear gas and protesters slingshotting and throwing frozen water bottles and fireworks and M80s and stuff at the cops. Here's a new story. And I didn't know that it would be the story of the whole weekend. So I met him, and my first impression of Kyle is that he was there to play Call of Duty. And I don't mean that in a sense like he wanted to shoot someone, just that, like when you were a kid, you watched Ninja Turtles, you wanted to go fight with sticks outside. You watched for us, it was the Green Bay Packers, the state ordained religion here in Wisconsin. When we watched the Packers play, we'd want to go play football outside. So this kid, he seemed to be very into this Call of Duty lifestyle. He had the medic. He wanted to be the medic and help someone. I say, well, they have medics in the protester side. He's like, our medics are better. Because prior to this, what I've been covering all year has been BLM protests. I was in Minneapolis when the 3rd precinct burnt down. So I said, okay, well, I get that. And he's like, no, seriously. And then I heard somebody communicate to him, and he goes, is it time to take positions? I was like, whoa. Take positions. All you guys really need to do is stand by your property, look non-threatening, and there'll be no drama. You're here to protect the property, not to engage with anyone. I also learned a couple other things, that there is alleged communication between the armed citizens and the police, or at least that they knew of their presence and that they let them know that they would be there at that point. So I got a bunch of that footage. I went over to the gas station, and there was a lot of confrontation over there because, armed citizens, and people thought they were there for them. And they said, no, we're just here to protect the businesses. We're not here to counter protest what you guys are doing. And what ended up turning out is when the police went over there and they pushed all the protesters in that direction towards the militia, by the way, they had 360 degrees they could have pushed the protesters, but they sent them right down the militia's throat. And I started to go, why are they pushing them right at the militia? There's so many other directions they could push the protesters. What's going on here? So it was interesting.
So you think that there's a possibility that they wanted some kind of conflict, they wanted some kind of moment, and then not only did they get that moment, but they got it in spades. I have to ask you, I've covered a lot of things. I've never been anywhere where actual live gunfire of any sort takes place. Now, obviously, you're there, you're watching it as it happened. What was it like for you? Was it kind of just like an adrenaline shock, because you kept the camera on that almost the entire time? You didn't bail out, you didn't turn and run. And I'm not saying that, that's a good or a bad thing, but I am commending you on the fact that you got the footage. What was running through your mind as that happened?
Well, I wasn't really. I'm kind of numb to the whole aspect because I've covered so many protests, even with the third precinct, with the burning down of all the buildings and people shooting guns into the third precinct and burning down buildings and explosions. So after a while, 3 or 4 days of M80s and everything else, you start to become, I think, somewhat used to a lot of these scenarios, which isn't a healthy thing because you may let down your guard. And, I would have to say there is an adrenaline rush. Your senses are heightened. You feel a little bit more alive. And I was actually just concerned that nobody get hurt. So what you saw me do throughout majority of my 3-hour video that evening is I tried to de-escalate things. There was even a meme going around calling me what was that? I can't remember. It was something referee. It was like a protest referee that was keeping people from engaging. Because at one point you saw the militia, they were flashing. What started it off really is the militia started using their laser pointers on their guns and putting them on people walking down the road. And so all of a sudden that caused confrontation. Of course, the BLM and Antifa and everyone else there, they had laser pointers and they're laser pointing back, right? Because they had drones there. And it escalated. And I said, listen, are you guys trying to get killed? Because all you had to do is sit there and do nothing. And they probably would have walked by mostly, not giving you a hard time. And then I turned around and then there was a dumpster on fire. So I ran over by the dumpster and I yelled at 2 individuals that were there. One of them that seemed to be involved with Kyle Rittenhouse. And I turned to who looked like was in charge. And I said, this guy shouldn't be here. He's a loose cannon. You need to get him out of here. And he goes, I know. You got it in the video. Then the tear gas started to happen. And just as that started to happen, the protesters threw what was allegedly a toxic chemical bomb on the roof of the car lot where we first saw me interview Kyle Rittenhouse, and it was ammonium and bleach and some other things. And so that's when the police strolled up and they said, hey, we really appreciate you guys. You guys want water? And they said, yeah, we want water. So Kyle Rittenhouse walked on over there and got his water bottle. And then the guy in the roof said, you told him, he let them know that they're throwing chemical bombs at us, which is an act of war. You can't even use chemical bombs in war, right? It's against the Geneva Convention. Same thing with tear gas. So long story short, and I don't mean to be long-winded here, I kind of decided, well, I kind of wonder what the cops are telling this kid. So I went over there and I tried to film and I caught the back end of it while he's handing out water. But at some aspect, Kyle Rittenhouse wasn't going back and forth. But one of the kids yelled as they were being pushed away, hey, they have another car lot. Let's go get that one. And so the rest is history. At some point, Kyle Rittenhouse was reissued a gun because they took the gun away from him, re-gave him the gun. And he walked over to the second car lot to protect it. And that's when things happened. Now, there is a point, I didn't see the initial shooting, but everything that happened in the streets thereafter I saw because it was about 40 yards away from me. And I had to make a decision on if I wanted the footage or do I really love my family? And do I want to put myself purposely in a position versus like I have no choice? Like 3 or 4 days before that, I had viral footage of a cop getting hit in the head with a brick. Okay, it was all over every channel, you name it. And I had no choice. I was there. The camera was aimed at him, and it happened. I didn't have a choice to get out of that situation or de-escalate it. It would be selfish of me to not think of people who care and love about me.
No, absolutely. Listen, I even some of the hairy moments over this weekend, I'm thinking to myself, you just never know what's going to pop off, and I need to get out of this situation. What was it, Saturday night? I never ended up over at the hotel until much later. We ended up outside. I was out there just trying to enjoy a couple beers, trying to get Rob Dew to go back inside. I was done for the day. I didn't bring any of my cameras. I had my selfie stick in case, and I had my phone, right? And sure, we'd already walked by some questionable things. The first time I was out there Thursday night, I'm walking down to that initial JW Marriott get-together, and 5 minutes in, Antifa is screaming at me and cursing me out and calling me a fascist. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That was very bizarre to me. What was your overall take from this weekend? Because you talked about Kyle Rittenhouse and his need to play Call for Duty. And although, there may have been, some positive messages, for instance, via election integrity and free speech, etc., from the Proud Boys, there's also a lot of LARPing. There's also people that are in there, like you said, dressed up. They got a Rawlings baseball cap on, and they're ready. It's like, you're not playing softball, bro. What's going on? And sometimes that can put out the wrong message. For instance, the big hype was that they tore down that Black Lives Matter thing in front of the church, right? Well, I was there as it happened, and I'm sitting there with my buddy Joe Scanoni, who you briefly met, the guy dressed like Indiana Jones. And he goes, I don't like that. And I'm like, I don't like that either. It sends the wrong message. But then, because I'm marching with those people and they're not being violent to me, people are like, you need to speak out against that. I go, well, I did. Well, it happened. How many times do I have to speak out against it? And then one of the Proud Boys yelled at me, the time for filming is over. The time for action is now. And I go, easy, buddy. I'm here to cover it. Like, I'm not, there's no proud, I don't join groups like that. I know that you don't join groups like that. And it's not because I don't think that we need to organize. It's because this is never, like you said, at least to me, been about right or left, conservative or liberal. And identifying as such, in my opinion, degradates the actual message that we're trying to get across, because there is a problem with this election. There is a problem with this media. All of that's real. But I don't necessarily think that I have to have an R next to my name to believe that.
Oh, and absolutely. It seems as though after I got that Kyle Rittenhouse footage, that everyone wanted me to do something and that I'm a bad person, that I enabled this to happen because I didn't do enough. Listen, there were like hundreds of journalists there that weren't doing anything to prevent, people from engaging. They just sat there and filmed. And our job isn't to engage. In fact, we put ourselves at risk every time we open our mouth and engage. Indeed, I remind you, in Kenosha, BLM burnt down a church. They didn't steal a BLM sign. And I wonder if that church has that sign on the church so it doesn't get burnt down. And there's a whole lot of things we just don't know. We can't just assume that everything that's happening is what we think it is, because we didn't ask the appropriate questions and we didn't research it. And I'm not going to engage anyone, especially during a volatile situation like that, other than maybe to save a life if that's necessary, because I do care about people and if I see things getting out of hand. Now, pertaining to Saturday night, so while you guys were doing that and having your frosty beverages, I literally, at 6 o'clock, I was down at the JW Marriott where everyone was supposed to meet. And then there, all of a sudden, I would say about 250 Proud Boys just started running. And somebody said, we know where Antifa is. And just out of nowhere, I turned around behind me and it looked like there's probably, and I used to be a concert promoter, so my numbers are somewhat accurate. I would say between 800 and 1,200 people following us that were all Proud Boys. And what was interesting to me, since I've never been involved in that scenario with the Proud Boys, never been really faced with them, was how many minorities there really were compared to what the media told me, that there's like one or two and just the leader, that's all that there's in minorities. I would say a good 20 to 25% were minorities. There was females there, which I didn't anticipate. And it did seem like there were some adrenaline junkies, like you mentioned. There's people there. They're like, hey, this is the purge. Our phone vibrates. It's curfew. Come out with your bat with nails on it. And let's do Rumble. And it felt like that. So we were running around trying to engage, not me, but Proud Boys were running around trying to engage with Antifa, and the police were protecting them. Isn't that funny, considering that Antifa doesn't like the police? And at one point, because the groups were moving, we were going through alleys. It was like Gangs of New York style. And I was waiting for the Braveheart moment when we were going to collide with Antifa. And that moment happened when the police were they miscalculated and they didn't realize that there was an alley, and about 200 to 300 Proud Boys ran, and then there was a clash. And I got that in video. And one of the kids, Antifa, jumped the line of the cops and ended up kind of getting pretzeled, and the cops dragged him away. And then a couple other people started to engage. They were throwing bricks, like literally bricks, frozen bottles of water. And I was just trying to watch for my safety. And then the police, then I had to worry about the cops. Not only do I have to worry about Antifa hurting me, now I got the police pushing me around and hitting me with their baton or whatever it is. They're all looking like they walked out of a movie from the 1980s wearing, armor from Demolition Man. It's ridiculous how militarized the police have. But I will say, at any time, if the Proud Boys really wanted to destroy Antifa, they could have broke that police line, because by the end of the night, when things got bigger, there was probably about 6,000 Proud Boys there. I've never seen anything quite like that. And what does Antifa expect? This is the result and the exact repercussions they anticipated. And then in some ways, I feel this is what they wanted, is to have this division and to create this kind of civil war mentality.
I agree with you. And again, I want to say this because I'm seeing the only fascists need to fear Antifa. I'm not a fascist. You can go watch the first video I did as I sat down in D.C. In 5 minutes. I'm being screamed at and called a fascist and then surrounded. I didn't approach anybody. A woman with a mask started screaming at me, and I didn't understand what she said, and I told her to take the mask off, and then I'm getting flipped off, and then I'm getting megaphoned, and they're protected by the police. I didn't have that happen once with the Proud Boys. Not one time. No one approached me because I had a camera. And let me say this. We had an instance during that march where they were able to keep Antifa on one side and Proud Boys on the other by one city block. Much more on the Antifa and not people, but police presence. I'd say there was probably half to a third the amount of Antifa on that side than there were Proud Boys the other. Now, that's where the bear mace was, because they tried to rush the cops. That's where you saw somebody get drug out. And during my march, there was a couple that drove down the wrong street. Now, I know that they were warding off a ton of streets. It was even tough to walk back to your hotel in many instances. You were going up and around. These people didn't even have their car lights on, okay? Now, instead of their windows being smashed, instead of some horrible, news bit that you've seen, instead, the Proud Boys lightly tapped on the car, told them to put their lights on, and then spread by the hundreds to let them drive through to the next city block so they could get out. And that's something that's never going to be carried by the news. Now, that doesn't mean I think all Proud Boys are great or that I get behind the movement, but I know no one took issue with me. No one tried to get violent with me. I saw them not try to get violent with a car that was in the middle of hundreds, if not thousands of them. And that's something that we have to take into consideration. Now, does that mean that their position is 100% right? No. I interviewed Joe Biggs while they were doing that march, and I was trying to reiterate that it doesn't matter who gets into office on January 21st. If we all don't stand up now and take over our local governments and oppose these lockdown scenarios, they will never end, right? We just heard Bill Gates tell everybody, 6 months, no bars, no restaurants, lockdowns through 2022. What? Huh? I didn't elect the guy. But meanwhile, there's this charge of red versus blue and black versus yellow. It is a little, I want to say, childish to me. When at the end of the day, it's not just Republicans you need to fear. It's not just Democrats. It's the predator class that is controlling both parties and controlling the narrative. It's the one that's encouraging censorship at these big tech hearings that seem to go nowhere. So do you think there's a way to reach either side? Because even with like Antifa, dude, they on Saturday night, there's more and more of this craziness going on after we leave. And I want to go to a 7-Eleven. I see two Antifa guys by themselves, right? One without the mask on. So I'm like, all right, I can see his face. I'm going to ask them if they know where I'm going. Polite, nice, hey, bro, yeah, bro. You get them alone or in ones and twos when it's not the group-like mentality. It's somebody you can talk to. Now, even in the group like mentality with the Proud Boys, I think that's the big difference is you can start talking to people and you're not going to immediately be shouted down for your ideas, even if they're in opposition to what they believe. I mean, do you agree with that assessment, or how do you feel after being amongst both groups of people?
I have to say, I've been treated fairly mostly by Milwaukee. Our BLM group isn't very violent. They're very big advocates of peace. So me being an old time, activist here, it's one thing. But while I was out there, I will have to say that there were times that the Proud Boys could have stomped Antifa. There was 3 or 4 kids sitting on a corner, and they were mouthing off, and they were definitely Antifa. And then there was about hundreds of these Proud Boys, and they just decided that wouldn't be the right issue to do. So, like, I don't know. There's extremists on both sides. I know Will Turbot had a really bad issue where he got stomped a little bit, but he was trying to ask Flynn a question. And he kind of did some ambush journalism, but that's a whole different thing. My experience overall between the two groups, I will say the left has been very mean to me, very rude, and the conservative aspect, or the right, the Proud Boys, like you mentioned, seem to be more kind towards what I do. But I believe in majority the issues we're having, much of them are due to censorship, because if you remove the ability for people to have a civil conversation, you'll only leave one love language left, and that's violence. And what you're seeing here is if we ban all the Proud Boys off the internet, we ban any conservative ideology off their platforms. If you have any opinions that aren't negative about that are negative about the left and Antifa, you immediately open the door to being banned and removed completely from social media. Luckily, with my viral footage, Snopes and PolitiFact and CNN and Fox and John Oliver, NBC, ABC, they all used it. So guess what? They took us off the fake news lists. I don't know if that's ever been done before, that independent journalist site that was on the fake news list has been removed, but they removed us. And I don't know the reason why, but I can only assume it's because they all sourced me and I had the viral footage. I had all the footage everyone wanted to see. And they tried to steal at first. I had to hire a company to go after these people who were like trying to take videos and saying it was theirs and trying to copyright it. And just because they didn't want to give me credit because of the fact that I don't believe like they do. Listen, my show is all about giving people data. I'm not here to offend anyone. I'm not here to make any enemies. I just want you to have more data so you can make a proper scientific decision. And when you don't want to hear something, you're limiting the amount of data you have and your ability to make a proper decision. So that's exactly what the social media networks are doing by silencing people. They're invoking violence by preventing a civil conversation. And I'll be honest, the money and everything else that's going towards Antifa, even if they got what they wanted, it wouldn't stop. It's all about setting the future for what's called fully automated luxury communism. And if you guys are out there and you've never heard of this, basically it's you live in your UN Agenda 21 household as COVID-19 rapes and pillages all the world research companies because they're shut down. You lose your wealth. And guess what? Living in the city is going to be free, guys. Here's the UBI. We'll get you off those natural resources and you can live in this UN Agenda 21 mega city with, facial recognition, drones, and, you'll have a robot that looks real hot. They'll give you back massages while you're at home and your wife will come home and be jealous of the robot. It's just crazy. But these are real things. I'm telling you, this is the goal, and they want to limit the world's population. So you have this guy, and you mentioned his name, Bill Gates, right? Dr. Blue Screen. I call him Dr. Blue Screen because in 2001, he gave a tech meeting saying that Windows was uncrashable in front of the most important tech moguls in the world. And guess what? Windows crashed. The only thing he's a doctor of is the blue screen. And if you want to take that COVID juice and listen to Dr. Blue Screen, who likes to put Planned Parenthood chop shops in the inner city because he loves minorities, let's not forget, Dr. Blue Screen wants you to take that COVID juice. And you know what? When you take that COVID juice, if you die, it's not the COVID juice. It's complications due to COVID-1984. So,
I love it.
That's what they're saying.
And I don't know if you saw it. No, that was a great rant. I don't know if you saw it, but Water is now being traded on the NASDAQ and the futures market. It's actually being traded. This is the next step in controlling the resources. The Great Reset is nothing more than a rebranding of this same UN global governance, New World Order agenda that guys like yourself and myself have now been talking about for years. Why don't you tell my audience about the Rundown Live? It's the rundownlive.com, when you do the show, and how they can support you, Kristen.
Yeah, for sure. If you guys want to find out more, my show is Monday through Friday, 11 to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. So 11 a.m. to 2, or 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to 12 Pacific. I'm on KGRA Radio. You can listen to it live by downloading the KGRA radio station app, or you can go to the rundownlive.com. We have a live section. We're on every platform. We have an app on everything. We're on iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Spreaker, Stitcher, you name it. And KGRA Radio is our main hub, though. They just great audience. The producers are great. They take good care of us, and they let me have my freedom of speech. And they're seeing the growth. What they're seeing is growth in a time when people aren't seeing growth, because they're allowing me to bring out this information and this truth. So the rundownlive.com, you can find me on YouTube, subscribe to the Rundown Live. And if you want to support me, go to the rundownlive.store and buy some health products and or swag. We have some really cool swag out there. And if you listen and you call in, I send you free stuff anyways. So that being said, I really appreciate you having me on, Jason. It's a great, and I have to say, I watched Loose Change. And, you know, it was one of those videos that really led me to things, that and the Architects 9/11 with Richard Gage. You know, those, it just, everyone has different data, and we need to bring and watch all data, whether you agree with it or not, and listen to all sides, whether you agree with it or not, to make a proper decision. Otherwise, somebody else is making that decision for you.
Absolutely. And again, we need to combat less speech with more speech, or bad speech with better speech. And we can do so on these platforms, you know, for as long as we possibly can. If they want to silence us, we got to kick and scream even more. And that's why YouTube is important. So make sure you're checking them out over there as well. Kristen, we won't wait as long to do it again. Maybe we'll do it before the inauguration. Thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate you, brother.
No, I appreciate you guys too, and everything you do. Deuces.
Awesome. So that is Kristen T. Harris, the rundownlive.com. I hope you enjoyed that interview. I enjoyed doing it, and I enjoyed seeing them out there. Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, and New World Order, Define and Shade the Motion Picture are free right here, right now in the playlist section. Thumbs this video up, subscribe, and share. Join the Burmis Brigade if you're not a member. Remember to make that free Rockfin account, that free Rockfin account, that free Rockfin account. 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Monday through Friday. You can check me out live, free, and exclusive over there. By the way, guys, 2 exclusives still free, 2.5+ hours of content on COVID-19 84, interviews with doctors on the vaccine, and then the second one with Scott Jensen, the doctor/state senator that was blowing the whistle on how the numbers were being calculated in the United States. You don't want to miss those. They're still free. Go make that free account. And if you do buy the premium account, remember, you get everybody's stuff. Ben Askren, John Fitch, The Convo Couch, Nico House, Slow News Day. Steve's going to be on tonight. You know it. Support me, $5, $10, $15. It means the world to me. Big donors couldn't do it without you. This is how we do it several times a day on subjects that actually matter and are outside of the mainstream. So support guerrilla journalism, which is the best journalism, because it's still trying to be honest. I love you guys. It's not about left or right. It's about right and wrong. And I'll see you on the flip side.